Today we're going to make a logo design here in Illustrator. The purpose of the assignment is to take a word, in this case it's paintimation, sort of like claymation, and using the idea behind the word and some images to create a logo. So to get started, we're going to open a new file. I'm going to go open new. And you can size it to however you'd like. I'm going to do a 8.5 by 11, which is like a sheet of paper. And I'm going to choose over here the orientation being horizontal. And I have a new blank canvas. Different from Photoshop, this is called the artboard. And I'll just zoom out using Command plus and minus. Control plus or minus on the PC. Just like in Photoshop, you can zoom in and out. Differences with Illustrator, you can actually create shapes outside of the artboard here. However, when you go to print anything, it'll only print or save in a PDF what's inside of the square. I'm going to grab my text tool. Hotkey is T. I'm going to type paintimation. And things to know about type, just real briefly, if you highlight it, you can then go up here and change it. And I know that I need to make this pretty big. You can actually type in 100 point, hit return, make it big. You can also change the font type here, but it just tells you the name. What's easier is to go up here to the type menu, go to font, and you can actually see and kind of rifle through some fonts that you think are appropriate. What you want to do is select a font that is appropriate for what you're trying to communicate. So in this case, I'm trying to communicate something about paintimation, which is animation with paint. And I thought handwriting Dakota might work well. If we go back to the original logo that I've made, you can see I've made some alterations to it. And right off the bat, it's pretty straightforward. It kind of looks similar to the alterations that I've made, and I can go in here and make something else out of this. But the idea really is that you can start with a font and sculpt it. I'm going to use the black arrow tool, and different from Photoshop, when you type something in Illustrator, you have to use the black arrow tool to move it around. You can also use the white arrow tool, but the difference between these two tools, as you see here in this tutorial, is the white arrow tool is to do very specific, sort of really small, minute changes to anchor points and paths on a shape. The black arrow tool is sort of to select the whole broad thing here. In this case, I can select the word paintimation and move it around. I like to think of it as the black arrow tool is like a big hand, and the white arrow tool is like your tweezers. Okay, so we'll take this font, and I'm going to go back to the type tool here and highlight what I've written. And if I want to make any changes, remember I can just go up to the type menu and change the font. What I'm going to do though is grab the arrow tool. I'm going to select the whole thing, and I'm going to convert this type into an object. So if you go up to the type menu and create outlines, you'll see when I zoom in here, what it's done is it's taken this font and it's turned it into an object that is now something you can manipulate in Illustrator. So using this white arrow tool, you'll see here, if I select on it, I can now move individual anchor points around, and I can convert or sculpt, however you want to think about it, this shape into something else. Also remember Command Z, Control Z on the PC will bring you back in time. Something also to remember in Illustrator, layers down here. Whenever you make a new layer or create a new shape, it's going to actually put it under layer 1. And the same applies as with Photoshop. Whatever layer is on the bottom will be underneath, if you will. However, whenever you create a new shape in Illustrator, or a new text, or add a new image or something, and it creates an actual new layer, this creates, in Illustrator, creates sublayers. First thing I want to do, if I look back here at my modified logo is I've converted the eye into a paintbrush. It's a pretty obvious sort of thing. Paint, and then, for the dot in the eye, I have a smear of paint or drip of paint. And then I also have this little underscore for A to let you know that this is sort of a hybrid word, paintamation. And also I have, the drip here also makes up the I, crosses the T, and then, kind of points your eye back down this way. My hope with this logo is that your eye doesn't drift off, as well as not too much going on. Now, I would say that, this handwriting, immediately I've had to alter a lot of these because they're a lot more stylized, if you will, and I had to actually simplify it because it's a complicated word. Now, if you have a really simple word that you're using for your logo, then you can get a little more stylish. So the idea is that the more letters, probably the less stylish you want to get, or the less complicated you want to be. Some of those best logos that we looked at in class are very simple. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. Paintamation. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this object. So if I go up and I grab the arrow tool, you can see that this is all one object. And the very first thing is I want to break this apart. And I'm going to go up here to, you can group and ungroup things. And so in this particular case, I've created outlines, and now I have individual objects. Okay, so I want to go up and I want to select this with the black arrow tool, go up to type, create outlines, make sure that I have indeed created outlines for this object, and here are all my anchor points. I'm now going to go up here to object, and I'm going to ungroup this. What this is going to do is it's going to give me individual objects for each letter. And in some cases, like this one here, the I, if I move it off to the right or move it up to the top here, you can see that, in fact, these are two objects that are grouped together, and it's not going to let me ungroup these. So a way around that just immediately is to use the white arrow tool, and you can select. You can drag and select like I have here, and you can see that it just copied this one or selected this one area. Then I can just copy it and paste it. And what I did was to copy and paste, Command C, Command V. And same thing for this shape here. Let's do this. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. So now when I go back over with my selection tool and I select on this, you can see the difference. I've just copied each individual component for this whole thing. So Illustrator doesn't always know that you want to change this font into, in this particular case, the dot on the eye and the main part of the eye into two different objects. And I want to do that because I'm going to do some changes. You can see what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to change that into a brush. And then I'm also going to alter that eye, or the dot of the eye, to make it into a sort of a blob of paint. Okay, so I'm going to actually just take this and delete it, and I'm going to bring this back over. Next thing I need to do is find an image of a paintbrush. And I found one online. It was a free clip art. And I'm going to go File, Place. And I found it right here on my desktop. I'm going to place it. And it's really big. So what you do is bring this down in size. And I'm going to turn this thing into an eye. And if you hover around the outside, mind you, I'm using the black arrow tool, which is the selection tool. It's actually what we call it. If I kind of hover around the edge here, it gives me that rotate option, just like in Photoshop. Okay, so I'm going to make that go right there. And you can see that it still has a bounding box, and how you can see it covers over the N and so forth. You can arrange things in your layers, and I'll bring this layer palette right up here to demonstrate what I'm talking about. By the way, this little blue box over here tells me, which one I'm selected on, and so I'm going to select on this N, say, and I've If you double click it and that happens, it just means you're in isolation mode. Don't worry about that. It just isolates this one object. I'm going to take the N, I'm going to move it up past my linked file, which is this thing. Also, this image, it's linked to somewhere on my folder, so what I'm going to do immediately is go up here to embed. I'm going to embed it, so now it's just part of the image. Okay. Also, the A, it's over here. An easier way to do this is to go up to the object, arrange, and you can do this bring to front. And what it did is it just moved it in the stacking order up above this. So the little white bounding box is still around it. If you really want to get rid of it, you can bring it over to Photoshop and alter it there. However, we can just get around that just by stacking things on top of one another. Okay, so I'm going to select this object here. Let me zoom in a little bit more. I'm going to go in. I'm going to select the object. I'm going to go over here to Live Trace. And it kind of gives me something really basic in the beginning, and you can always select on this Tracing Options dialog. Select Preview, and you can go up here and say, okay, well, I want to do a simple trace, or I want to do a photo or something like that. And be careful that you don't select these too quickly, because sometimes it takes a few minutes for it to figure out what you want it to do. In this case, I'm just going to do a simple trace, because I just want something that's black and white that looks just like the letters. And in fact, that's what I got here. You can change the threshold on the object by lowering it, and that'll simplify the object, and that's fine. That's actually what I want here in this case. And once you like it, hit trace. Okay, and then we want to add anchor points to this thing. We want it to become a vector shape, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit expand up here. And now you can see that it has anchor points just like the rest of my letters here. These little anchors that when you select on them with the white arrow tool, which I should have done there, makes this thing something that you can now manipulate. If I go over here, and you can see that my paintbrush looks a little bit different. I've had to make some alterations to it. So, for one, I had to make it a little bit longer. I added this little line here that kind of gives you some visual continuity to know that this is like the ferrule end of the brush, and this is the brush tip. I also wanted to change the angle, so the whole thing kind of had this curved gesture to it. And these are all things that you're going to figure out with your own particular design, but I'm going to go in here and do the same thing and show you how I did that. So first off, let's draw that line. I'm going to zoom in. You always want to be close as heck when you're working with Illustrator. This next tool is the pen tool. It's right over here. And make sure there's no plus or minus next to it. We just want to have the pen tool selected. And I'm actually going to go up into this shape a little bit. I don't want to be hovering over an anchor, because you can see what happens and converts the anchor point to a delete anchor point tool. We just want to have just a general shape. So I'm going to click once up there and click once down here. And it doesn't really look like anything happened. What you can do now is just grab the selection tool. You can select your object, and when you click on it, it brings up this set of tools up here. The one on the left is fill, and I don't want to fill in. I just want to actually add a stroke. So I'm going to select this guy here, make it black, and you can see what happened. It just created a thick stroke for me. Well, it's a little bit too thick, so I can then come over here and just say, all right, I want it to be 0.75, and it shrunk it down a little bit. You can always type in this area as well. And it looks pretty good right there. It might need a little bit of tweaking. You can see this little bump here that's sticking out. Of course, I can always zoom in even farther. Grab my white arrow tool, click once on this anchor point, and move it. I'll show you what these handles and stuff do in a minute. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to zoom out. Okay, but I want the tip of the brush to go back like that. I want to give it some gesture, and that's what that's where the artfulness of Illustrator comes in handy. So, okay, with the white arrow tool, if I click on the object, I now can click on anchors, and it actually brings up all my anchor points. Fortunately, I only have 3 anchor points. Sometimes you're going to need to actually delete anchor points, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. If I click on it once, release, and then click again, I can then move it around. And each anchor point has these things called handles. They're Bezier handles. Sometimes depending on your object. You can do them independently. You can move them independently. Other times it won't let you. So if you find that it's moving both at one time, just hold down your Option Alt key, and it will allow you to move one at one time. And the farther out you pull this handle, the more curve you get. The farther in you bring it, the less curve you get. Now I have a pretty cool gesture to my brush here. I might even want to zoom in again and say, now I'm going to bring this stroke that I made over a little bit. It's pretty good. Okay, next shape is up here. I need to do something with that. Let's see what I did with the original. I made a kind of a big long splatter like that. A couple of things you can do to start with is just grab your black selection tool that just selects the whole object, gives you a bounding box, and I can just turn it around like this. If you wanted to flip it, like mirror it, you can come over here underneath the erase tools. The next one down, you have the rotate or reflect tool. And I can just grab the reflect tool and kind of click and drag across it, and it will just mirror the object for you. In our case, we don't exactly need that, but kind of a handy tool. Okay, so I want this to sort of look like it's come off of the brush in that particular angle. So once again, I'm going to click on the white arrow tool. It's the direct selection tool. You kind of just click once on each anchor point, move it up. Click again, move it up. And just remember, you're sculpting this thing. So this was at one point a dot in the eye, and it still is, but it's also going to be something that's going to tell us a little bit more about your image, about what your logo is about, and this is about paint. So I need paint splatters, naturally. Okay, in this case, what I'm going to show you is I don't think I need this anchor point, and so you can select it and delete it. In some cases, it's going to be fine. Other times, it's going to look like it screws everything up, and you're going to want to reconnect the dots here. If you come up here and you go to View, and the first one over there is Outline, you can see now it's going to take the fill off, and it will just show us what the stroke or path looks like. And you can see I deleted an anchor point, and what it did was it took an anchor point away. I'll go back with the pen tool. When I just hover over the 2 points, it will reconnect them. Okay, and then I can go back to View here and do Preview, and that will give me what I want. I made a square anchor point on this side here, so let me show you that. If I click on it, I zoom way in, as close as I can get. I want to make this anchor a curved anchor, so I'll convert it, and see what it did? It just popped 2 handles on there for me to use. So if you find that you're like, oh, one side has a handle, one doesn't, you can come over and click on the anchor point and come over here and convert it. I know it didn't exactly convert in the last shape that it did, but it's okay. I'm just moving forward. I think it looks okay, but the whole thing kind of bulges out over here a little bit. So I'll click it once, kind of move it over, direct select it, and then select it and come over here. And maybe I want to have a little bit more bend to it, so I'll just manipulate it so it kind of feels right. This one needs to convert here, and then hold down Alt Option. Bring that way in like that. That's going to look way cooler. Yeah, now it's got some good gesture to it. I don't know if that's exactly like the last piece that I did, but we'll move on from here. So you get the general principle. I mean, a lot of things you're going to have to do with the font that you choose, depending on the font, is alter it. For instance, this is kind of distracting over here to me anyway. So I would come in maybe and delete some of these anchor points. Actually looks better there. That happens, and it wants to reconnect things. So maybe in this case the easiest way is just to take the anchor and bring it in. Sometimes Illustrator just wants to like reconnect paths, and when you create outlines, I know you guys don't know a whole lot about vector shapes yet, but Sometimes vector shapes are created when you create an outline that are unintentional or not something that you would actually expect. So, in this case, that needs to be rounded down there. I'll just round it. I mean, I know it seems simple, but that little kink that was there before, I'll show you what it looked like before, and then just by moving that a little bit, you can see how much nicer that looks. You're going to make this uniquely yours. Here's another instance. That looks too fat now compared to everything. This bottom part of the M just bugs me. I don't like it. So I'm going to come in, and I definitely don't like that down there. So I'm going to come in and make some changes. It's okay to do. You're using the font as a jumping off point. So I'm going to thin this guy out. I'll give it more of that lean gesture that I'm looking for. And I think that looks a lot better already. I'm not trying to tear up whoever made this font. This certainly needs to move over to the right. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Bump that over like so. And maybe even that A and the I, or the A, I, and T, I should say. Move that over. And you can see in the next one here, I've actually deleted this and incorporated this into this T, and I'll show you that in a minute. I'll show you that now, actually. You can hold down Alt Option, click, drag, release the mouse, and then release Alt Option, and that's a quick way to make a copy if you don't want to do the copy-paste method. So what I do is I turn this into the T, which then I put another paint stroke on there, and then that came under the A. Real quick, simple way to make a stroke into something that's real gestural and helps lead the eye. I'll just show you what I mean. The eye here looks like a big paint blob, and then I took it and came across this T, and actually when I hover over it, you can see what it used to be, the T. I kind of adjusted that and erased out some of it, brought that across, and then I had another one here, here, and then here. And these are actually all copied from the same shape. I just wound up clicking and moving anchor points around to change them to what I wanted for real. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to go back actually a few steps. Once again, this guy here, I just want to use the direct selection tool, select each one. In this case, select this guy and delete it. I don't need it. Move it over here. I'm going to keep that eye in place, but then I'm also going to use this one here. It's because it's longer and it's kind of already set up for what I'm trying to do. Oops. Take each anchor point and bring it up on this T to begin with. I mean, you could even erase these out. I don't think there's any danger of it reconnecting and making new shapes. So I'm just going to do that because I know that I'm going to already cross this T on my own. I'll bring that up. That looks fine. Yeah, it's okay. Something I'm going to zoom in here, I want to show you real quick, is when you get something that looks like this, it looks all funny and weird, it's just crossed up Bezier handles. So, if you cross over a Bezier handle from one side to the other, it does this kind of weird thing. And that's all we're seeing here. So, you can picture it like, I'm trying to untangle a little bit of a mess here. When you move anchor points around, you can see what happens. So if things aren't working out, always go back to that mode there, that outline mode. Kind of check and see where you're at. Okay, looks better. Back to preview. You can always add anchor points too. Say for instance here, I wanted to bring like an anchor point up here. Go to the pen tool, come over add anchor point. Click on the plus here, or wherever you want it. It'll have a little plus sign next to it. Add an anchor point. And then now I have an extra anchor point. Cool. Looks pretty good. Let's see, what did that original one look like? Yeah, I kind of steered up to the north there, didn't it? So I'm going to do something like this. Yeah. Bring this other anchor up. Maybe I need to add another anchor point, so I'll just pop one in here. Sometimes you have too many anchor points, sometimes you don't have enough to do what you're trying to do. Let's bring that down. That looks great-ish. You can see that the underlying shape, I didn't click that twice. Click it twice to activate it. You can actually see what the path looks like. And I just want to bring that T back in just so that that whole intersection looks pretty smooth. I think in the original I had this like blob over here. I did, totally. Oh yeah, by the way, you can go from literally from one to the other and copy and paste from one project to another, but I think what I did in this case when I made the original is I just copied this guy again. So copied it over there. I use the Control-C, Control-V command on that set of actions you just saw there, but and I'm starting to use my hotkeys now as well. A gives you the white arrow tool, V gives you the black arrow tool, and you can kind of, hopefully get used to using those if hotkeys are your thing. This is sort of looking like what I had here on the other. This might be a slightly different variation. At any rate, it looks sort of gesturally like a blob from a paint splatter. I don't want things to line up intentionally. You can see that little corners like this aren't very attractive, so I'm just going to come over and try and make these things kind of line up a little bit more pleasing to the eye. Okay, let's zoom out. Yeah, it looks good. Better. Starting to really turn into something here. So if I zoom out, yeah, starting to get it. I might actually want to create a little more gesture on that thing, and you can see how I would do that just by using the white arrow or direct selection tool. That's what it's called. To maybe create a little more gesture to that thing, a little more curve. Maybe bring up these corners a little bit. You really just got to play around with them. And it's not immediately obvious how these Bezier handles work and such, but hopefully through the next couple classes you'll practice these and get a little bit better at them. It's taken me some time to get kind of good at them. I get this weird bump there. These are the things I want you to be conscious of. Is this a good choice? Maybe not. Maybe I need to add an anchor on this path right here. Oops. And then maybe I need to move that whole edge up. Just using the pen tool straight up, change your color here. This is fill. And if that happens, it means that that thing is selected. You just have to deselect off of it. Grab the pen tool. Come over here, grab your color. That pen. And create those shapes that you want. Something like that, maybe. Remember, Alt, select. You can come over and just grab one handle. Maybe something that looks a little nicer there, like that. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Remember, less detail can do more. Okay, you don't have to add all sorts of stuff, but choosing the right font, adding a little bit of a, like a clip art picture like this, and converting it into a shape, and this is free clip art, will really just kind of help bring your point across. If I go back to what Paintimation logo I had already made, I added a little bit of a stroke to the outside of this shape here. Really what I want you to do is not be so concerned with the functionality of Illustrator, but try to communicate using one word and using images to reinforce an idea.